We're Ama La Vida, and we are a life, health and wellness, leadership, and career coaching company. And my name is Justice, and I'm a relationship strategist here. And pretty much what that means is whatever medium you find us on, if you click book a call to learn more about us or have a conversation, there's a high potential that you'll end up on my calendar. And what we'll do during our half hour together is we'll really sit there and I'll learn more about you, and we'll really unpack, your current situation and your goals. And then I'm going to make a recommendation of a coach or coaches on our team that I think would be best suited to work with you, given their background, their personality, their skill set. There's a lot of factors that go into it. So we're really going to take our time together to do a deep dive to make sure that we get you put with the right person. And that being said, if anybody has anything that they want to talk about, or, and they need to get off their chest and want to start coaching, I'll go ahead and drop my link right now. First come, first serve. Got some openings next week if you want to jump on in there, but I will also be posting that again later. We also have a couple other links that we'll be sending in throughout the event, but it also will be recorded. So everyone will get a copy of the recording post-event. But with that being said, we're going to turn it over to our lovely coach, Natalia.
Cool. Well, thank you. So I'm going to share my screen. So hopefully you're all at the right event, but if you're not, welcome. And I hope you're pleasantly surprised. So today's event is Demystifying Passion and Purpose. And this is a lot of words, but really I think passion and purpose are heavy with connotation, expectations. And this is really just a little time for us to work on redefining what that means, what it means for you, and how we can maybe look at it differently to create a career, a life that works for you, and that really helps you thrive in really who you are, and not what it means or what we think it means. So Justice did a really great job at talking a little bit about us, but we're Ama La Vida. Those are our two co-founders right there. And Ama La Vida means love your life in Spanish, and that's what we help you do. We use e-coaching modules and just so many different coaching approaches because we have a team that has been trained in so many different ways. So that's really one of my favorite parts is when you work with us, you don't just get me as a coach, but you also get all the wealth of knowledge that I get from all our other coaches. And then you get the chance to work with them as well. So you just have a huge team supporting you, and it's really amazing. That's me. I'm a holistic and life and career coach. Really, I like to put both of them together because I don't believe separate life and career. And I like looking at the big picture when I'm working with my clients. They're not just their job, and they're not just the person they're outside of their job. It's a little bit of both. And I'm really fascinated by storytelling and the stories we tell ourselves. So I love working with clients to deconstruct the narratives that are serving them and the ones specifically that aren't serving them, and figuring out how they can rewrite them and rewrite their definition of success to create a life and a career that is suited to them, and really working through what stories are going on in our heads all the time and how we can make those stories a little bit more helpful and not so hurtful in our lives. So to jump right in, we have a little agenda. We'll talk about logistics really quickly so you know what's going on and what to expect. Then we'll dive into talking about passion and purpose, what they mean, what we're taught that they mean, and then redefining them and looking at them from a little bit of a different perspective. Then I want to talk about the downside of that great advice that we've all gotten or maybe even given to people, follow your passion. Then talking about what you can do instead. We'll go through a little guided exercise, and then we'll jump into Q&A. As Justin said, feel free to pop questions in the chat as we go along. If it's something that needs to be addressed right in the moment, Justice can interrupt me and I'll go ahead and answer that. And if not, we'll save them for the Q&A portion. All right. So logistics, like Justice mentioned, today's session will be recorded and shared afterward to everyone who's registered. I will also share some resources, some research that I talk about during this presentation. So you'll have some cool links to check out. The other things to know, if you want to register for future events, you can use that bit.ly, type it into your browser, and you can see all of our upcoming events. And then you can visit our webinar library as well on our YouTube. So if you ever missed an event, or there's just a topic that really interests you, or you just want to see what we've been up to, you can view them there. And then I want this webinar to be interactive and to be a conversation, not just me giving you information and telling you things. So please engage, ask questions, use the chat, and then Justice, I'll ask you to say anything if I'm missing it, but I'll take a look at it every once in a while, so we can just make this a conversation. All right, so first I want to start with asking you all to type into the chat what passion means to you. So it can be what it means to you personally, or what you have been taught that it means. What does passion mean when it comes to your life or your career? Where you put the heart of your energy, what calls you, something that excites you, what you do when you have free time, what drives you, something that gives me purpose. Cool. Well, I'll ask you what purpose means next. So I like seeing that. Something that fills your heart, where you lose track of time. All right. And then as you're still typing those, what does purpose mean? What is that? What have you been taught? Something that makes you feel fulfilled. Something that I cannot do. The why. Yes, I like that. A little nod to Simon Sinek. Start with your why, the driving force. Cool. All right. So what I did was I went to my trusty dictionary and I really looked up the definition of these words. And the reason I did that is because I think a lot of us think passion and purpose are these things that have to inherently fill our hearts and give us a sense of purpose, and we have to love it every day and all that good stuff. And the definitions are so much simpler, right? So passion really is a strong feeling or excitement for something or about doing something. There's nothing in the definitions that I've found that said it's you can only have one, or you have to find it, or it's innate, or it's supposed to give you everything you're looking for. It just means you're excited or enthusiastic about something. And I think the level of excitement and enthusiasm can also be defined in many different ways, right? Some people get super excited about tiny things, and some people get not very excited about huge things. And that's just, there's so much in the range of human emotions. And I think that's really important to notice too. And then purpose really just means something set up as an object or an end to be attained, or intention. So really is like the purpose of eating is to give yourself experience. So really thinking about, when we're thinking about our lives or our careers or even our passions and the things we're excited about, what is the intention? What's the end? To what end are we doing these things? And then that really allows us to think about, how can we be purposeful and intentional every single day, rather than waiting for purpose to come to us? So I want to talk about the downsides of this follow your passion, the advice that we hear all the time. There's a few things that this advice kind of assumes that, and we all know what happens when you assume. So I want to kind of just talk about them and put them out there so we can think about it a little bit differently. So first, it assumes that we only have one passion, right? The idea of just follow your passion and you're going to be good. It assumes that there's one and we have to find that and then follow it and let it lead us somewhere. It also assumes that passions don't change with time. So when you hear someone older maybe telling someone fresh out of high school, oh, just follow your passion, you'll be fine. It's assuming that your passions at 18 will be the same as when you're 35, when you're 50, and when you're 80. And it also assumes that passion is something we find or that we know, that it's innate. And if we don't have it, then we're kind of out of luck because it's this thing that we're just supposed to have or somehow know about. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle, is that you tell them follow your passion and they say, well, cool, great, but I don't even know what that is. How do I do that? What am I even following? I think this is one of the biggest downsides of this advice, and it's that it makes us think that it should be easy. You know, that idea of if you do what you love and it's your passion, you never work a day in your life. It's not really true, right? We still have to work. We still have to wake up early or maybe check emails or do things that are work. And a lot of the times when we think about following our passion, we really think there's a dream job waiting for us that once we find it, all of our problems will be solved. And then lastly, it's a privileged message that really isn't possible for all of us. You know, there's bills to pay, families to take care of, and sometimes passion is really important, and it is really, you know, something we want to aspire to, but sometimes making money and paying for what we need and making sure we have food on our table is more important. So really just something to focus on is there's more to life than just following your passion. So now that I kind of pointed out all the downsides and all the things that maybe aren't so great that this advice is assuming, I want to talk about better advice, which is develop your passions. And there's three big reasons why the advice to develop your passions, which doesn't sound as sexy, it doesn't sound as cool, but it actually does three main things that I think are really, really special and important. Number one is it leans into growth mindset. So growth mindset is a mindset that was defined by Carol Dweck in one of her books. And it really is when people believe that their abilities, their basic abilities, can be developed through dedication and hard work. In German, the word for passion is actually Leidenschaft, which means to work through hardship. And it's really a belief that your brains and your talent is only the starting point. But you have a lot of power into developing these skills. And it's not, oh, you just have to be naturally good at something, and that means it's your passion. Is you can actually learn and grow as you develop your passions. Then it also empowers the individual. So to say follow your passion is a really, really passive piece of advice, right? It's saying there's this thing, you should follow it, just let it take you wherever it takes you. And developing is really much more active on your part. It empowers you to act, to assess, to think about things, and really puts the control back in your hands of what you get to do. And lastly, just because the word develop in its definition means to grow and change, it actually celebrates growth and change. So it allows your passions to evolve and shift and be a little different and kind of learn from what you're doing as you go along. So now that we've talked about this new piece of advice, developing your passions, let's talk about how you can do it. And there's so many ways that this exercise that we're going to go through is definitely not the end all and be all, but I think it's a good way to focus on developing your passions with purpose. And it's through one of my favorite things, which is curiosity. And just because I'm really into looking at the dictionary, I looked up what curiosity meant. And curiosity means a desire to know, an interest that leads to inquiry. And I think the really key point here is inquiry doesn't mean asking questions like, will this hobby of mine make me money? Will I get promoted right after I get a job? Will I be good at this thing that I want to try? Because as you can tell, all those questions could be answered with a yes or no, right? Or maybe an even I don't know. But curiosity asks a different type of question. It asks open-ended questions or open-ended statements. So you really lean into the questions like, I wonder if, or what if I try this? I think curiosity is really good if you look at your bookshelf and you say, okay, what do I read books about? What are most of my books in my bookshelf about? What am I curious about? What can I talk about for hours when I'm talking with friends or I go to a networking event? What are the things that I kind of just forget that I'm even just been talking about for a few hours? So I want you to kind of think about that. I don't know if some of you have your bookshelves nearby or you know what these things are. And I want to go through a little exercise. This exercise is called the 10 Lives exercise. It's from a book called I Could Do Anything If I Only Knew What It Was by Barbara Sher. And it's really asking you the question, instead of following your passion, thinking about the one life you can live and what that's going to look like, I want you to imagine you could live 10 lives. So if you have a piece of paper or if you're typing it out on a computer, just write out 1 to 10. And I want you to think about what those 10 lives would be, what you would do or who you could be. And there's some kind of rules to think about here. One is you don't have to be good at it yet. So it's not a skill that you already have to have. It doesn't have to make you money yet or ever. That's not really what matters here. And what other people think about it doesn't matter ever. So if your mom doesn't approve, if your friends think it's weird, if they don't want to try it, it doesn't matter here. This is just what would you do if you could have 10 lives? And I want to give you just a few minutes to write that out. And I'm going to write as well. And just take a few minutes to think about it. I'll put some music so we're not all sitting in awkward silence. I'll give you 30 more seconds to just write out the 10 things. You can give me thumbs up if you have them all done so I can get a sense of how everyone's doing. Cool. Some thumbs up there. Do 10 more seconds just to wrap up the final thoughts or final ideas. Okay. So now we're going to go through. I want you to look at all those 10, and I'm going to ask you a few questions, and you're going to kind of match one of the 10 that you have into these categories. So the first category is, which life can you devote to yourself this year? And since, like Justice mentioned earlier, it's already almost October, let's talk about it in the next 12 months, not through the end of the year. So which life can you devote yourself to this year? And feel free to type it or just star it or whatever helps you kind of categorize it here. Once you got that one, the next one is, which life can you do or start doing after life one is complete? So say a year from now, you've really devoted yourself to that first life. What can you bring into the mix? And whether that means combining it with life one or starting new and doing it on its own. Next one is, which life can you do for 20 minutes a day? 20 minutes is arbitrary. It could be 15, it could be 5, it could be an hour. But what can you do once a day? Which life fits in there? Next one, you can choose multiple lives for this one. What lives can you do on the weekend? So this doesn't have to mean you do them all every weekend, but which ones can be your weekend lives? Now you spend your time off. And lastly, which lives can you do every once in a while? So which ones are the ones that you can do maybe every month or once a year or once a quarter? And that can also be multiple. So can doing 20 minutes a day if you have 40 minutes, or if you want to split the 20 minutes into 10 and 10. So now that we've thought about that, I would love for someone who feels comfortable to share what their 10 lives looks like. And that can be, you can unmute yourself and hop on video, or you can type it out on the chat, whatever you want. But I would love, you can raise your hand, or you can just come off mute if you'd like. And I can share mine too, if that helps. I'll share mine first, and then maybe one of you will want to. So the life that I want to devote myself to this year, growing as a life and career coach. This is the first time that I'm working with a company, and I think there's so much to grow from that. So that's what I'm devoting myself to this year. And then one of my other lives is I really want to be, I'm consider myself a writer. I'd like to be an author of something. So after life one is complete, I'd really like to dedicate some time to writing something. That might be a blog, it might be an idea for a book, whatever that looks like. For my 20 minutes a day, I chose to, I really would like to own a restaurant one day. But I just want to dedicate 30 minutes to an hour every day to really just cook a good meal. So work on those skills while I'm doing that. And I see some in the chat. So I love that already. And so maybe as I'm working through this, maybe you can think about, okay, which ones can I use and how can I use them? And then on the weekend, I'd love to be just a full-time traveler and a yoga teacher. So I just travel. Like I said, I'm going to Boise, trying to find weekends to do little getaways and then teach yoga when I can in the studios that I can. And then all my other lives that I didn't mention fall into once in a while. So I would like to be a sculptor and a painter. And it's like, okay, great. Every once in a while, I take a sculpting class at the place down the street. Or I just paint and I pick up my paints and I just paint something. So I'd love to hear if even someone can share the life that they want to devote themselves to this year. If you had to choose, which one is that? And you can pop it in the chat. Cool. Katie, executive coach this year. Awesome. Mountain bike coaching skills and then adding travel. Cool. Mountain bike coaching. Awesome. Storyteller via podcast. Ballerina. That's so awesome. Painting more. Building a bean to bar chocolate company. That sounds amazing. Cool. All right. So I want you guys to really keep this list and start to think about as we go through it is now what? Now what do? You have this list. Great. These are all the things that I'm curious about, that excite me, that light me up. So what do we do? So one of the things that I always talk about is being biased towards action. And this is another maybe piece of advice that's a little backwards, but I want everyone to act and then think. And the reason I say that is because we're really good at thinking. We're really good at thinking ourselves out of things that we want to do. We're really good at thinking ourselves into our fears and really buying into those thoughts and not doing anything about it. So what I want to encourage you is to pick an action, no matter how small. So really pick what's that first step you can take that takes you forward towards following that curiosity, whether it's mountain biking and just going out and looking at mountain bikes, or walking on a trail to check it out. If it's doing your podcast, is it listening to other podcasts? Is it recording yourself? What is that first step you can take? And don't think about it too much. Just take that step, and then the thinking will come later. And we'll talk about it. Coming to this webinar, I love that, Charlie. That is the first step. And you did it, you're here. So now that kind of takes us to the next idea. There's three of these that I'm going to put in here. One of them, Charlie, because you brought it up, is celebrating small and big wins, right? It's not just the end goal that's worth celebrating, but celebrate every little step. So if coming to this webinar was your first step, congrats. Like, that is huge and you did it. And now you can celebrate that and think about, cool, how do I take this energy and take a second step? What does that look like? A really good way to kind of set these mini steps. I really like to think about it. You're crossing a river, the goal is the other side of the river, but you're not going to jump over it because that's scary and you don't know what's in there. So we have to drop little stepping stones in there. And those are your milestones. So my two favorite ways to set goals are epic goals, which is what we talk a lot about in Amala Vida, and SMART goals. I'm going to share some resources in the follow-up email about how to set epic goals and how to write out SMART goals. And really, it's whatever works for you, whatever makes the most sense, whichever one resonates, and helping you set that bigger picture so you can see the end goal, but also identifying those milestones and those little steps. So you're biased towards acting and not overwhelmed by where you are now to what the end goal is, and kind of freeze up. The other thing is share your curiosity and your goals and your wins with people you trust. A lot of the times we're really good at staying in our own heads, and when problems or fears become a lot bigger when they're not shared. So tell your partner, your friends, your family, people that you trust and that you know is a safe space for you to share these things. Keep them updated. Ask them to help you celebrate your wins if you don't know what to do or how to think about it. And then lastly, this is where it comes after you do all of this. That's when you think. So you've acted, you've done things, taken little steps, celebrated them. Always take some time to check in with yourself and think about, okay, what did I learn? What am I realizing? What are my big takeaways? And then do a reset. The great thing about developing your passions is that there's room to course correct all the time. You don't grow without changing. So you can always let go of what didn't serve you that one time that you tried it, and try something new. Or if you thought you were interested in something and then you did it and it turns out you're not, so what? Don't do it again and try something new. So this is really a good time. Think about it after you act, as an act of reflection and setting a new intention with every step that you take, which really relates back to purpose and feeling purposeful. And how can you check in with yourself so you're making sure that your intention is aligned as you move along? And the other thing I always talk about, it's in my bio, it's one of my favorite things, is sometimes there's this idea that we have to be jackhammers in the way that we achieve our goals, right? Like we find the passion and we just drill down and we get into it. And I want to encourage you to be a hummingbird instead. And I can explain to you what this means, but I want to let one of my favorite people, Elizabeth Gilbert, explain it, because she's just much more charismatic and amazing. And I mean, look at that smile. You have to listen to it. It's just a little tidbit of her explanation, but I'll also share her whole Super Soul sessions if you're interested.
Hummingbirds spend their lives doing it very differently. They move from tree to tree, from flower to flower, from field to field, trying this, trying that. And two things happen. They create incredibly rich, complex lives for themselves. And they also end up cross-pollinating the world. That is the service that you do if you are a hummingbird person, because you bring an idea from here to over here where you learn something else and you weave it in, and then you take it here to the next thing you do, so that your perspective ends up keeping the entire culture aerated and mixed up and open to the new and fresh.
So how can you be a hummingbird? And as you're going through all this, as we're demystifying passion and purpose, how can you view your many interests, your 10 lives, all these things that seem like they're disconnected and they don't make sense together, as cross-pollinating? And I would be dumbfounded if I saw anyone that ever saw a hummingbird move in the way that they move and not be in complete awe. So how can you turn that awe back to yourself when you're exploring and following your many, many, many passions. Oops. There we go. So that's where my webinar ends, but I'll let Justice talk a little bit about how to get in touch with us, but I do have one spot opening up for coaching. So if you're interested, you can always get in touch with me via my email or reach out to Justice and he will set it all up. You can work with a coach and really work on cultivating and developing your passion. Coaches can support you in kind of identifying, rewriting those narratives, also challenging maybe the narratives that we don't think that are we think are serving us, but are really holding us back, and really being a support system. And one of those trusted people that you can share your curiosities and passions with. So Justice, I'll let you share a little bit more and then we can go into the Q&A if there's any questions.
Yes, thank you so much. That was beautiful. I know there's a lot of things that I definitely internally came away with learning that I could work internally on. If any of this resonated with anybody here, as she mentioned, she does have one spot opening up. But that being said, we have a lot of very qualified life and career coaches on our team that, can easily tap into this. All of our coaches partner together. And so whether working with us and Natalia or anybody else, you'll definitely be in good hands. So if anybody would like to schedule some time to meet with me to figure out the correct coach on our team to help you, given everything I mentioned earlier, background, personality, skill set, and just all sorts of other input factors, I'm going to drop my link right there. Go ahead and schedule some time to talk with me, and I cannot wait to speak with you. And that being said, I guess we can just open this up to the Q&A. Feel free to write questions in the chat, or if you're comfortable enough to come off of mute and speak, or camera, the floor is yours.
Well, I'll stop sharing too. So yes, can you let us know about what is EPIC? Yes, absolutely. So I will share a whole blog post about it, but what EPIC stands for is it's a framework on how to set goals and what your goals should look like. So E stands for elevating, which means your goal should really connect to your personal vision. So that's really why your why is important. Is this goal aligned with my why? Is it elevating me towards that? Or is it something that my mom wants me to do, or that my friends are all doing and I think I should do it? The P is practical. So really, where are you now and what's the next step? And really staying realistic. The I is impactful. So really strategic, visibly moving you towards long-term vision. What's the impact it will make? And clear. I think clear is the most important thing to focus on. Is how do you measure that goal? Is there a time, is there a time bound or a time line for it? Do you have clear outcomes of what it looks like when you succeed it? So that's what EPIC stands for. And it kind of helps you guide you through what you should think about as you're creating those goals and those milestones. And Anupma, yes, I will be sharing that link for the full, it's like a 20-minute talk. It's amazing. So I will share that with everyone.
And then can you reference the other links that you'll be sharing just so everybody's aware?
Yes. So we'll have 2 blog posts, one on EPIC goals, one on SMART goals. I have some of the research where I pulled like the downsides of your passions and the positive things of developing your passions. I love research. I come from a psychology background, so I shared studies and other cool articles that helped me put this all together. And I believe that's it. And then the YouTube link will probably be shared in that or somewhere in the email.
Yeah, it'll be in the email, but also it'll be posted on our YouTube channel. So it'll always be
perfect.
You can just look us up on YouTube.
Right. Cool. Any other questions? We don't share the slides directly, but you will be able to see the slides in the recording and take notes if you need to, or grab anything from the slides. Great. I'm happy to hear that. Yeah. And the good thing about this exercise that I love is you can do it as many times as you want. So if in 6 months you're like, I don't know, maybe these lives aren't what I was interested in, just do it again and check in after you try things. It's not set in stone. It's just a way to think about dreaming about your life differently. You don't have to choose just one path.
And then I just sent the link for the YouTube channel if anybody wants to ever save that. But also you can just look us up on YouTube and we're easy to find.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for coming, and thanks for participating and sharing all your lives. I can't wait to see you and hopefully hear about how all this goes if you join our little family. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for your time today. And then feel free to reach out to us if you need anything. But other than that, we will see you at some future events.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.